Good evening, and welcome to the Candidates Forum for the Somerville mayoral election, hosted by the Somerville Democratic City Committee. My name is Annika Van Eaton. I am chair of this committee. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Now, the preliminary election is September 14th, where the mayor's race, as well as city council for wards 5 and 7, will be on the ballot. After the preliminary election, the top 2 vote getters for mayor will go on to the general election, which is November 2nd. So this is, of course, as a Democratic Party chair, I'm going to give a PSA here that if you have moved since the last election, the deadline to register to vote in the preliminary is August 25th. There is also extended access to vote by mail, and you can find more information about registering to vote or signing up for a mail-in ballot on the Somerville City Elections website. And I want to thank all of the candidates for participating in this forum this evening, and thank our moderator, Lisa Kaczynski from Politico. And I will now turn it over to you. Thank you all so much.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Great. Well, welcome. I am Lisa Kaczynski. I am the Massachusetts Playbook author and a reporter for Politico. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Looking forward to getting started. In tonight's forum, we will hear from the candidates before us. We have Councillor Tatiana Ballantyne, Mary Casesso, and Councillor Will Mbach. Great, and so today's questions were submitted by Democratic City Committee members and selected by a forum planning committee of city committee members. If we don't cover a topic that you as a voter have questions on, the candidates here are very accessible, and the city committee urges you to reach out to them directly. So we will start with opening statements of 1 minute each, followed by a series of questions, and we will conclude with statements of 2 minutes each. We have a timer, and we will be starting in random order, starting with Mary Casesso, then Will Mbach, and then Tatiana Ballantyne, and then we will rotate through this order as we get through the questions. So we will start with introductions if everyone's ready. Great. So Mary Casesso, you are up first. 1 minute introduction.
And Mary will need to unmute.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to the Somerville Democratic City Committee for hosting this forum. And thank you to Lisa, the ward chairs, and all attendees. I'm Mary Casesso, and I'm honored and excited to run for mayor. My siblings and I were raised by a single mom in a 3-family apartment in East Somerville. Thanks to my mother, I grew up advocating for health equity, racial and social justice. We fought for United Farm Workers, blocking I-93's construction, and for the first health center in East Somerville. After being the first in my family to attend college and graduate school, I dedicated my career to social and racial justice and health equity, all driven by my values. I served in senior leadership roles in Somerville, the state, Harvard University, and Cambridge Health Alliance during the pandemic. This work inspired me to run for mayor. Issues of education, housing, employment, food, climate justice, all social factors in health of our neighbors.
I think we have hit time there. Thank you very much. Tatiana Ballantyne, you are up next.
Hi, I'm Tatiana Ballantyne, and I'm running for mayor of Somerville. I was born and orphaned in Greece, adopted there by a Scottish father and a Czech-German mother. We're a family of immigrants and immigrated to the United States when I was 4. I learned then that sometimes people are afraid of differences. I was sometimes ridiculed and excluded because of my differences, whether it's an accent, the foods we ate, or simply our culture. My immigrant experience has taught me to value differences and include people. I was the first in my family to go to college. I worked 2 jobs, took out loans to earn a BA and an MBA, and I moved to Somerville in 1993, and I'm grateful that my husband and I planted our roots here and raised our 2 daughters. I've worked for over 30 years in business, private, nonprofit, and government. I hope I can earn your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Willem Ba.
Yep, can you hear me okay? Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited. I'm running for mayor of Somerville because for too long, the needs of the most marginalized in our communities have been ignored. Government is not working for them. I know exactly how this feels. As I'm an immigrant from Cameroon, I know what it feels like when you're working hard but barely getting by. My parents both died when I was a young boy, and I was raised by my family members and in a foster home. In 2010, I was lucky enough to receive a visa to come to the United States and work. And when I came here, I saw that our government did not always work for you when you need it most. I experienced this firsthand when I tried to apply for master's, I was denied. Until we have a government that reflects the population it's serving, we should stop talking about issues like racial equity and environmental justice. That is why I'm running for mayor, to accelerate our community's progress on these issues and change the conversation. Right now, the most marginalized in our community do not have a seat at the table, but developers and special interests from outside of our community. If I'm elected,
And we hit time on that one. So we will be moving into our long answer questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer these. We will be starting with, what is a policy plan that you believe sets you apart from the other candidates? And Katiana Ballantyne, you will start us off.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. I believe the policy plan that distinguishes me is the environment and policy plan that I have. I have been the leader in all things environment for the city of Somerville. I have set groundbreaking legislation that has put us on the map in the country. Requiring LEED Platinum certifiable for buildings over 50,000 square feet, a native species ordinance, which is the first of its kind in the country. And we're getting calls from all across the state and the country to ask how other communities can move forward on that. We have a climate crisis now. And as many people know, the IPCC has put us in a code red. And my plan to move Somerville to carbon negative by 2020 is the place and the way we need to go, because carbon neutral is just not cutting it anymore. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Willem Ba, you are up next.
I didn't know I always have to unmute myself, but thank you, Lisa. I think, one of the policies that sets me apart is rent control. I'm the only candidate who has consistently and proudly supported rent control, because we need to take care of our working class families. If we want them to stay in this city, it must be at the table. And we can look into the tools on how to restructure it, because affordability is our number one issue in this election. And so I also believe in increasing the affordable housing percentage in new development. 20% is not enough. We need to continue to hit hard, because it's this is something that if we don't take care of our working class, we will not have a community anymore. So that is my number one issue that sets me apart in this election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mary Casasso, now to you.
Thank you. I'm getting it down, the unmute. Yes, thanks for the question. I have spent 30 years on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I work for Governor Michael Dukakis on affordable housing. And this was by design on my part. I mentioned that I grew up poor in Somerville, and because of my grandmother owning a 3-family home, we were able to have housing. I think of housing as a right. I think of it as a health equity issue. So some of the areas where I would focus, in addition to what's been mentioned is creating affordable housing, putting resources in to activate the land trust fund, exploring the community builder program that's been introduced in Boston in the 26 gateway cities, whereby each unit has a subsidy of $150,000. I would make sure that we preserve the public housing and expand public housing. With the resources that will be available with the housing bond bill by the state, as well as the American Rescue Plan resources, we should have more money to address affordable housing, workforce housing, artist housing. Finally, for small property owner occupied houses that make rents below market value, we should recognize those people as preservers of affordable housing. Thank you.
Great, thank you all very much. Moving on to our next question, we'll be starting with Willenbaugh for this one. So what city department do you want to see the biggest change in direction, and what would that look like? And Will, we will start with you.
Thank you, Lisa. I think we should, if you look carefully, we need to start with DPW and ISD. These are key departments that have a lot to do to be able to take care of our residents, and there are little issues that we don't often talk about, Lisa. We don't talk about rats. Rats is a big issue in this community. And so if we don't have a functioning department that have all the tools and resources it needs, we can be pontificating about all these different big issues. Meanwhile, the layperson wants to take care of, like their rats. How do we, sync them together, make sure that this department, they work together to be able to create a structure that works for everybody, retrofit our buildings. You will still need DPW and ISD. These are people, if you want to also talk about bringing our buildings to carbon neutrality, you still need these two departments to work together. So ISD and DPW will be my number one department that I will focus on to streamline, integrate, and then to communicate so that we have a clear process of who is actually, doing what, who is checking it. We have all this building now. We are focusing on rebuilding our system just now. It's not supposed to be like that. We shouldn't be operating as if we are almost falling off a cliff. We need to have a system in place and checks and balances and even benchmarks to check on our progress.
Thank you. Mary Casesso, you are next on this one.
Thank you. Thank you. I also agree that we need strong leadership in management in the Department of Public Works. Those are vital services, and our taxpayers and everyone that lives in the city cares deeply about those services. In addition, as I've canvassed every ward in the city, I've heard a lot about Inspectional Services Department and what appears to be delays and confusion as to the status of requests through that department. So coupled with the investment that would be needed, stronger management, and perhaps additional staff to do the job, first they'll look at the accountability. I also feel strongly that we need more navigation of services through the 311 system. I also think that we need to close the loop when a call comes in and there's an issue raised. I think folks are confused over what black box those issues might go into. So let's close the loop there. And finally, as someone who has worked on health equity for so long, we have to invest more in our public health infrastructure. We know that infectious disease issues are not going away. We also have to work regionally to address these issues, to be as smart, efficient, and effective in addressing public health issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Katian Ballantyne, you are up.
Thank you. So I will agree with my opponents. Inspectional services is probably the department that I would really direct my energies on. In door knocking, I hear about it a lot. So I hear from homeowners how long it takes them to get permits. I hear from them that it's difficult for them to read the zoning, and then they're not quite sure how to read the zoning and who they should call in order to get information or try to anticipate, how they should move forward. So I think that we need to look at the communication flow. We need to look to make sure that ISD has the resources and that we fund it appropriately, that we're able to hire people, and that there is an opportunity for quick responsiveness to our constituents. 6 months to wait to get a permit is a really long time, and it's been very discouraging for a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now to our third question. We'll be starting with Mary Casesso on this one. So this question is, what would be your priorities as mayor for Somerville's response to the COVID pandemic? And Mary Casesso, you're up first.
Yes, thank you for that question. I was in the trenches during the pandemic, working 7 days a week when there was no personal protective equipment, and we worked with neighbors and friends making masks. There was food shortages. There was lack of testing for families. And then finally, after the disproportionate impact on many people in the Metro North and the Somerville area, there was distrust related to the vaccine. So I worked to bring vaccines right to churches and to schools. So related to the pandemic, I feel we need to very quickly go back to wearing masks indoors. I have never stopped wearing my mask indoors when I'm going to supermarkets, etc. I have worked very hard to introduce the elbow bump and eliminate handshaking. That's always been a practice since the H1N1 flu entered the Boston area, and we've gone back to handshaking. It's reduced colds and flu season, so that's another issue I'd eliminate. An investment in public health professionals working regionally with all of our communities and working smartly to focus each community on helping with unhoused, helping with food, helping with the mental health issues that occur.
Thank you very much. Katiana Ballantyne, you are up next for this one.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the whole thing.
Oh, my apologies. It is, what would be your priorities as mayor for Somerville's response to the coronavirus pandemic?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I believe that we need to have a COVID recovery plan for our students and for our families, and that we need to have a plan for our small businesses and our community. As city councilor, I put in a number of orders and also even a dashboard that I had asked that the city would consider filling out. And what it asked for is, let's set goals. We need to let our families and our small businesses anticipate how they can prepare for COVID. So let's be really transparent, set the goals of when we would require closings or we would require changes, and then identify contingency plans so people can have information and they can plan for themselves. We need to use science, we need to listen to public health experts, and we need to make sure that we can focus to keep our residents safe. We need to use federal dollars, state dollars, any local dollars of relief for our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to Will Mba.
Thank you, Lisa. One of the first things I would like to see happen is to extend the eviction moratorium, because this is something that we need to, first of all, make sure that people are stable, they have the right mindset to be able to navigate resources that we are talking about here. And we've also seen the importance of food insecurity for everybody. So we need to expand that also, like by increasing the CARES fund that we have, expand resources to reach out to many people. Also, we also need high-speed internet because this pandemic, Lisa, I have to tell you, the most people impacted are people of color. So it is shown just the importance of high-speed internet. How do you bring that, make it a public good for people? Because otherwise, we will not have any community. How do we ensure that even people there are still people who are unemployed right now, looking for work? How do we make sure that they have the resources that they need? These are the things that, I want to see happen, because otherwise, if we don't have redirect, all the stimulus money that we're having, strive for, make sure that vaccine is available, is also accessible, and then also incentivize people to meet them where they are. You can't just send this memo, say there's vaccine here, people have 2-3 jobs. How do you even encourage them, educate them, and then bring it right to them where they are? Go to Market Basket, go to the senior homes, have this really innovative approach that is fair and equitable to everybody.
Thank you. All right, and now we will be moving on to our next question, which is, name 3 specific steps you would take if elected to engage all of the diverse communities of Somerville in policymaking. And what past actions of yours should give voters confidence that you will follow through on that engagement? And we are starting with Katiana Ballantyne on this question.
Thank you. So I would make sure that everybody is included at the table. I have been the biggest advocate for the women and women of color and low-income women in the city of Somerville. They are usually the ones that cannot make it to the meetings because they're working 2 and 3 jobs in order to take care of their families. And so it's really important, as I've spoken to the Director of Racial Social Justice, that we go to them. We provide babysitting, we provide dinner. We cannot assume that everyone is equally supported and can be on the same timetable as people who have access to more technology or to more economics means. So one, they have to be at the table. I also want to make sure that girls are equally funded in our entire school. I have been the one that has collected the data and worked with the city on identifying that there's an unequal spending in girls. So we've hired a consultant to help make sure that there is.
We have hit time on that one. Next up on this one is Willem Bach.
Am I unmuted? Okay, because every time I'm trying to use this. Anyway, thank you, Lisa, for that question. I think most of the issues we are talking about here, these are issues that are all personal to me. First stop I will make, it's back to the Office of Housing Stability, which I led the effort to create, because it really stopped the involuntary displacement of our residents. And how do we expand that by intentional outreach to go also to all the public housing that we have in our city to ensure that they actually know that we have the resources available to them. Another stop is about public safety. Like somebody who has been racially profiled in this very city, and moved also to ban racial profiling. I think the next stop will be to continue on my effort that I led to create the Civilian Oversight Board to hold our police department accountable, because this is the only tool we can use and make sure that people affected by this issue of policing have a seat at the table, can design the structure. We incentivize them, reward them for their time to make sure that they feel invested, not just use them, and then also ensure that we diversify our police board. And then into the school, stop the school to prison pipeline. That's my third stop. Make sure that the students have a seat at the table for decisions that affect them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mary Casasso.
This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart, and I've spent my entire career participating or forming diversity committees immigration committees, committees to advance women, and I have mentored my entire career women and all folks who grew up like me, poorer, and didn't even know what a mentor was. At Harvard University, I was the only person that won all 3 awards for advancing women, for community service, and for advancing diversity. I formed an interfaith council at my last job to make certain we were going out into the community, into trusted sources and very diverse sources. So I activated an interfaith council. I have always worked closely on the front lines with every member of the employees, side by side at food markets that I have started, and I am very committed to a non-hierarchical structure. Folks at the front lines know best of all the changes that are necessary for us to be more effective and to include voices. I think continuing to have online options so accessing and participation are easier. We have always found that when you provide transportation for people that would like to attend a meeting, that's free, accessible, that works too. So I am very committed to issues on immigration, diversity, advancing women, and advancing issues related to social justice and racial justice. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, we are going to move into some lightning round questions now about housing. So this is where we're going to start with a yes, no question. Does everyone have their paper and pens, pencils, Sharpies ready? I'll give you a second. And we'll go in the same order just through these questions. So we'll be starting with Will, then Mary, then Katiana. Oh yes, for this one, you will just be saying yes or no. My apologies. So to start with, so this
I'm not going to write anything, just to be clear.
Yes, for this one, you can just say yes or no. My apologies. Sorry.
No worries.
Great. So the first question is, would you implement rent control in Somerville if rent control were to pass at the state level? Yes. All right. So that's from Will. Mary Casasso.
Yes, rent stabilization. There are a couple of issues in the legislation proposed that I would want.
Okay, we're going to keep these to just quick yes or no's, but thank you for the elaboration. And now to Katiana Palantine.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, now you are going to be writing answers on paper. My apologies for that. So what is the median rental price for a 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville? So write your answers down and hold up your piece of paper at the same time.
Rental income for a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yes, rental price for a 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville, what you think it is. Okay, that looks like 2,600.
Yes.
Okay, the Katiana says 2,400, Mary Casasso says, and 2,500, Willem Bass says. The answer is $2,500. And now
And Lisa will tell you when to hold up to show your answers.
yes. And so one more of these. What is the median sale price for a 2-bedroom condo in Somerville? And everyone writes down their answer. Let me know. All right, and hold them up. Okay.
Are we
So
doing this one at a time?
no, you just I'll hold them up and I'll read them off. Okay, so median sale price for a 2-bedroom condo in Somerville. We have Willem Bass says 1.5 million. We have Mary Casasso says 900,000. And we have Katiana Valentine says 750,000. And the answer is 720,000. The median sale price for a 2-bedroom condo. There we go. So now we're going to turn back to our 90-second answers. Thank you very much for the lightning round. Sorry for any little technical glitches on my end. Great. So we will be starting with Willenbaugh for this one as well, keeping with this order through this question. So we know that you all support increasing housing affordability in Somerville. So what would you do within your capacity as mayor to advance a pro-affordable housing agenda? And what specific administrative steps would you take to ensure the agenda becomes reality? And starting with Willenbaugh.
So, am I unmuted? Yes, okay. Yeah, it's like this. I'm trying to always like figure out like the muting and the muting. Again, you know, my agenda is, I will always go back to the Office of Housing Stability, because that is something that if we don't fully fund and expand that, you know, that is, we will not be able to realize that. Secondly, develop vacant lots, Lisa, into affordable housing. This is something that we've not been doing that before. Vacant lots. Make sure that you transfer all this land, you know, to the community land trust and develop affordable housing. This is, and also, I think we'll probably also understand that this pandemic has also shrunk and reduced the footprint of most office spaces. So that is also leverage that we can use there, you know, to, you know, build more affordable housing. Again, I said in the beginning when I was having this conversation that we need to increase the requirement. You know, 20% is not enough. We need to go beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you. And next on this one is Mary Casasso.
Thank you. I want to start by saying how fortunate we are to have the Housing Stability Office in the leadership of Ellen Schachter. I think she is known throughout Massachusetts and even beyond nationally. And the first thing I would want to do is invest in additional staff in that office and in that department. I also want us to work closely regionally, because people move from one of our communities. You can be, when I would walk to the Cambridge Hospital in the morning, I would leave Somerville and walk right into Cambridge, but the borders are that close. And so we need to be working that closely. I also would want to make certain we have accountability on all vacant properties or properties that have been unused for a number of years that provide opportunity for affordable housing development. I would like us to work more aggressively to get more rental vouchers, especially the state vouchers, because they are more flexible and more inclusive for all immigrants in our community, regardless of the status. I want us to seed fund the land trust, the community land trust, and preserve and protect additional.
Thank you very much. And now to Katiana Valentine.
So thank you. I would continue to use every tool possible to create, expand, maintain, and protect affordable housing. That means reinforce housing stability and prevent displacement. The Office of Housing Stability, the Community Agency, Action Agency of Somerville, having a renter's bill of rights, requiring institutional master planning for large institutions, especially Tufts, so they can build on-campus housing. I believe that we need to increase and protect affordable housing units in Somerville. We need to, and we can do this by collaborating with nonprofit developers and Somerville Housing Authority to develop local affordable housing, support the 2,000 Homes program, the Community Land Trust, strengthen the affordable housing ordinances and zoning regulations, protect the condominium conversion ordinance, strengthen the affordable housing overlay district to significantly increase the number of affordable units and also the 3-bedroom units for families, strengthen the inclusionary zoning to eliminate 100% AMI, strengthen the inclusionary zoning, to ensure small units.
And that is time. Thank you all for your answers on that one. Moving on to our next question. And if at any point you need me to repeat a question, please let me know. So this next one is about infrastructure. As mayor, what infrastructure projects would you prioritize? And Mary Casessa, we will start with you.
Thank you. I talk a lot about when I worked at city government in Somerville in the 1980s, the inception of Proposition 2.5, which left deep cuts in many services in the city. And in particular, the infrastructure projects, I think, were delayed, or the capital needed to invest on a regular basis in infrastructure. The resources just weren't there. So I do think that it's been a lot of years in coming. And I also feel that the federal government was less generous in the past. I think we have a lot of work to do with our water and sewer pipes and the separation of those pipes as we think of some of the impacts of the climate that we're facing now. Separating those are essential. We hear so often about road repair and the bumpy streets, and we need to do more for bike lanes. We need better, safer sidewalks for people like myself that only walk, and people that have to take baby carriages, or folks in wheelchair. I've talked to them about how challenging it could be. So that's where I would start in terms of the infrastructure for the city of Somerville.
Thank you very much. Next up on this one is Tatiana Ballantyne.
Thank you. Could I just ask you to repeat the beginning of that question, or say the whole question?
Yeah, no problem. As mayor, what infrastructure projects would you prioritize?
Thank you for the question. So infrastructure projects is, I would certainly support making sure that the deep flood areas in our cities are prioritized first. That is over around Route 16 in Ward 7. It is behind the Gilman Square area and making its way over to Foss Park. Certainly the Union Square that we've worked on, so those would be prioritized. I would also committed to complete streets, accessible streets, safe streets, and making sure that we have adequate funding in mobility, in engineering, in DPW to design and build appropriately. And
oh, you still have some time there. I think she might have frozen. Tatiana, are you there?
yes.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Sorry, I think I might have frozen for a second. All right, and Willem Baugh.
Thank you, Lisa, for that question. I think one of the things I would do is build our transportation infrastructure that, as we all know, is broken. I have to tell you, Lisa, like I have said it, that if you're a person with disability and you're a senior, you're almost invisible, you know? So how do we create a city that works for everybody? First of all, how do we make sure that free MBTA, you know, if we are trying to like help everybody and people of color, included neighbors with disability, talk about cut curbs. How do we create a street safe, build more friendly bikes and pedestrians, you know, so that this eco-mobility, shared street, that is how we, you know, build an infrastructure that works for everybody. 21st century infrastructure, where we are going, the profile of the city has changed. Also, what do we need to do again next? Build and prepare our city for the impact of climate change, which is not often talked about, but, you know, some of my colleagues have mentioned that. You know, continue to build on our stormwater runoff system, because this is how extreme weather is not something for the past, it's changing. How do we increase our canopies to tree canopies to eliminate the urban heat island? How do we have more green spaces to absorb rainwater and prevent flooding? As you probably already know, we are below sea level. So we need to do everything we can in our power. The two things we are trying to solve here is inequality and climate change. So no matter how you spin it, that is what we are talking here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And speaking of climate change, that is the topic of our next question. So we'll be starting with Tatiana Valentine on this one. And the question is, the Somerville Climate Forward Plan commits us to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, preparing for the impacts of climate change, and prioritizing equity as we do both. With the latest IPCC report emphasizing the urgency of action, how will your administration accelerate our progress on all three priorities? And starting with Tatiana.
And Kachana, you are unmuted. You can speak at any time.
Thank you. So I was appalled and really upset about the red rating that we all got. And the city of Somerville needs to understand that this is a crisis, and we need to understand that it's an urgency in terms of how to make our city resilient, and failure to address this will destroy our quality of life and undermine many of the things that we've been working for. As I mentioned earlier, I believe that we need to move and be aggressive to being carbon negative instead of carbon neutral by 2050. Somerville, at the same time, I want to make sure that we create environmental equity for all residents who are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. So we need to address the environmental justice corridors, make sure that people living near the high traffic areas and air pollution along 93 and 38 have a way to prioritize and to come up with strategies that will help them with green walls. We need more open space.
That is time on that one. Thank you very much for your answer. Willemba, you are up next.
Thank you, Lisa. Just so, can you repeat the question again so that I can get I want to get the whole juice of the question, because this is something that can you repeat that?
Yes, yes. So the Somerville Climate Forward Plan commits to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, preparing for the impacts of climate change, and prioritizing equity as we do both. With the latest IPCC report emphasizing the urgency of action, how will your administration accelerate progress on all three priorities?
Wow, thank you, Lisa, and thank you for your patience with me. I think, the plan is great, but it's not enough. If you look at the plan, even there are no benchmark to measure, like, what we are trying to achieve. It's almost like flying blind, so at least I will work to make sure that Somerville becomes carbon neutral by 2035. I think that's the earliest possible realistic goal that we can do. Like, how do we electrify everything, starting with our own city vehicles? Because if we even want to provide like charging station, we need to bring it also to the homeowners, incentivize the homeowners to be able to have, renters should be able to have an electric car, not just, like home, not just, city employees and so on. And then also incentivize homeowners also to be able to retrofit their building, how to continue to divert from oil and gas. This is something, and then also we need to also buy energy from clean energy providers. These are things that we need to be doing and have benchmarks to be able to measure progress. Because if we don't have that, there is no way that we will even attend it. And lastly, I have to tell you, Lisa, we don't even talk about, like, we always blame the big oil and gas company. Right in your own backyard, you're in your home, you're contributing to your carbon footprint. If you say educating people that, look, 40% of your waste is organic waste. You know, when it goes to the landfill, it's decomposing, it releases methane, it's increasing our greenhouse gas. Why don't you, talk about composting? You know, there are people who food insecurity. When you compost, it saves money, it's fun.
That is time on that one for you. Thank you. And just to address really quickly, the IPCC report, for those asking, is the UN climate report is what we're referring to, that came out, I believe, last week. And Mary Casasos.
Thank you. This is such an important question. And I talk a lot about the work that I did as a child with all my extended family fighting the construction of I-93 because of the pollution and the impact we saw on so many of our neighbors from the small dust particles in lung cancer and hypertension. So this issue hits very personally. I think the city has to lead in the issue of green infrastructure because buildings are the biggest contributor to gas emissions, and the city has to lead the way by looking at all of its buildings and making certain that we address those issues. As well, I've talked about having a tree canopy where it's an opt-out that automatically we will put trees throughout the city of Somerville for the canopy. And it was very interesting to read more about the cooler pavements, and I think that's being used in Tokyo. We need to incentivize our people to do the same. We need more electric charging stations. We do have to stop mass save, allowing gas hookups. We need to provide incentives for solar panels. And I agree, 2035 is long enough for us to wait. It's ambitious, but I think folks are understanding now that the impact on our children and our grandchildren is.
That is time on that one. Thank you very much for your response. And on to our next topic is transportation, which I know I've touched on a little bit already. So here's a question. We'll be starting with Willem Ba on this one. Somerville is fortunate to have a new light rail line nearing completion, yay, as well as new bike and bus lanes planned. How would your administration promote car-free living and public transportation beyond these existing projects? And in your answer, if you could give any specific commitments you have to advance those goals.
Thank you, Lisa. That is a great question. As somebody who said, one of my infrastructure investment will be in transportation. I think it's something that I cherish a lot. And also I have to say, I went to a school in Sweden. So it's like, if I biked there for 3 years, came here, I cannot believe that, just the difference in terms of safety for people biking, it's like day and night. So we need a citywide bicycle network. And so one of the things I did when I even submitted like a policy order was to build a bike infrastructure statewide. But till today, we've not realized it. We are only operating design by disaster. So we need to build protected bike lanes to make sure that people that, get people away even from their cars. It's like, the profile of the city has changed, Lisa. I have said this 100 times. If you build a city for cars, cars will come. If you build it for bikes, bikes will come. You build it for families will come. So if you look at the city, we're a young city. And so we need to, redesign the city that takes account, the people where we are going, and also making sure that our neighbors with disabilities and our seniors are well taken care of. The street should be safe for them to go on a walk and like everybody else, enjoy the outdoors. So this is something that I will prioritize in my administration.
Thank you. And next on this one is Mary Casasso.
Thank you. I got sad for a minute listening to that because I was remembering the 7 houses on each side of the street on 7 streets that were leveled for us to then look out to a wall and not be able to cross over to Mystic Street the way we always would. And so we have focused on building cars, transportation for cars. We have a lot of catch up to do. The Green Line will be a great start. It was promised to us some time ago. 85% of Somerville will now be within a half mile of public transportation. And public transportation should be free for all those that need it. We need more consistent bike lanes, and we should be working regionally on an infrastructure so you can go from one community to another with more ease and understanding of how it works. So we need safe streets for all as well. But we need the incentives to change behavior to go in this direction. We have a less than clean and very inefficient transportation system. And when people talk about European cities, and Will just did in Sweden, they are prompt, clean. We misalign the incentives. We need to turn that equation around and incentivize using public transportation, bike lanes, and walking. It's good too in terms of obesity. It's a win-win situation.
There we go. All right. And next on this one is Katiana Palantine.
Thank you. So I have worked, and I'm so excited, certainly 25 years ago, advocating for the Green Line to come in. And that was primarily because of environmental issues. But as that comes in, what else can we do? We need to make transportation reliable. Let's say 8 out of 10 cars that travel through the city of Somerville do not stop at a business and do not stop at a residence. So the design and how we look at how we're going to move forward in our city, we need to think of Somerville first. How do we move people around? And the easiest and the safest way. If we make transportation reliable, so if we have dedicated bus lanes that move across the city and that they are timely, so people know that every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes, that bus is going to come on time and bring you to the T-stop so you can make your connection. We need to do that. We need to give people, all users, opportunities to move around the city safely. We need to do that with protected bike lanes. We need to make sure that our streets and our sidewalks are as accessible and safe for all our users to do, that people aren't having.
That is time on that one. Thank you very much. Our next question will be about public safety, and we will be starting with Mary Casesso on this one. The question is, what is your vision for public safety, and what resource reallocations, if any, would you make to accomplish that goal? Starting with Mary.
Thank you. I talk a lot about refunding and reinvestment in human infrastructure. And in particular, I have done research on some programs that are being used as far away as Eugene, Oregon, and as locally as Cambridge and Lynn, whereby we would, for public safety, the calls that we take regularly for mental health issues, substance use challenges, domestic violence, folks that are unhoused, we need to have responses that de-escalate and trained individuals in social services, psychology, psychiatry, folks too that appears that have lived experience can provide a career path and track like we've done with peer recovery coaches should be part of the equation in the response in public safety so that we stop escalating issues and we respond as humans trained with trauma. Lots of times seeing a uniform and a weapon escalate the challenges that folks with mental health and other comorbidities face. So
That is time. Thank you. And next on this question is Katiana Ballantyne.
Thank you. So we've done a lot, but there's much more to be done. We hired a racial social justice director. The city council hosted town hall style meetings on reimagining the police. Some of that discussion included a civilian oversight, potentially, restructuring or changing job description types to maybe add more social workers. And what I think is that we should finish that community process. We should hear what the people who are most affected have to say, that they're included at the table in the discussion and developing the policy that most affects them. And we should think about, how we deliver on our values going forward into making, a caring and compassionate community. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Wilton Bach.
Thank you, Lisa. This is very personal to me. This is something that every time I hear about this topic, I get a little emotional, because for somebody, who is the only person of color or the only Black person on the city council who has been racially profiled, and also my kids are all Black kids, my wife, and when they go out, I'm always worried about their safety, making sure that they can come home safe. I have to say it's really personal. And so police are being asked to do jobs that they shouldn't be doing. A person with a gun is not the best solution for every incident. How do we reduce the risk of escalation? We need to reinvest in social workers, addiction specialists, and teachers. That's why I'm always committed to re-diverse, like your question said. How are you going to shift resources, re-diverse money from policing to stop the school to prison pipeline? This is something we need to do. And then the civilian oversight board that my colleague mentioned, there's an effort that I led on the city council because of all these things that are happening, because I know that I can relate with them personally. There's nobody that can handle something than somebody who actually have been a victim of almost all the issues that we are talking about as it pertains to public safety. And I also think that we also need to diversify our police force, Lisa. If it doesn't reflect the community that is serving, there's still, because people need to feel comfortable to approach, someone that looks like them also in this space. So
that is time on that one. Thank you very much. All right, our next question is on equity. We'll be starting with Katiana Ballantyne on this one. And the question is to share 3 policy changes you plan to implement to advance racial justice and/or equity in the city of Somerville. And Katiana, we'll start with you.
Thank you. So equal spending in girls. We do not spend equally on the city side of the budget for girls, and our youth under 18 are majority children of color, and a big portion of those children, probably in the 40% or low 40%, are girls of color. And if we think about Latino girls, they are the highest group. And why is that important? Because the data will show us just recently that Latino women make 57 cents to the dollar in the workforce in Massachusetts. And that Latina girls, through a Cambridge Health Alliance and Somerville health study back in 2017, said Latinas also are at higher risks of obesity. So we need to invest in girls to help them get on a healthier track. We also need to make sure that the guaranteed income program, which I had submitted as a legislative order, is started, because we know that economically women are most affected and low-income women are most affected. So supporting that program
Thank you very much for that one. I appreciate that. Next on this question is Will and Bob.
Thank you, Lisa. This is going to be something that is pretty straightforward to me. I want to say one of the things I will do is to continue to invest in the civilian oversight board that I helped to create. That is something on my racial equity lens, diversify our police force. That is something that I will continue to look at. As also one of the things I've been fighting for from day one that I became a city councilor, and I mentioned that during my introduction, that until we have a city that reflects the population, we should not be talking about issues of racial equity, environmental justice. It's all noise. It's all noise. You know, so I will work with the racial and social justice director to, you know, diversify our hiring practices, make sure that it is fair and equitable for everybody. That is what I will do, and that's what I'm committed to doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary Casasso.
This issue for me is personal. We're an adoptive family. My daughter is from Paraguay, South America. When my daughter was in her carriage one time with her babysitter, the comment was made that they should go back to wherever they came from. So I understand this, the challenge and the unfairness that people of color have always faced. I would also say that my entire career, I have worked hard to make certain that in all hiring decisions, we reflect the diversity of the community, and even if it's not the community, what we know is right and just. And that is at all levels of an organization. It's easy for folks to hire at entry-level positions, but we don't seem to be able to promote growth and advancement. And that would be the first thing that I make sure we do. Universal pre-K, starting kids early in school. Sometimes the slot exists, but the transportation didn't exist. And by third grade, it's clear how successful someone will be with their educational background, et cetera. And I agree with Katiana's remarks on good.
That is time on that one. Thank you very much for the response. Moving on to our next question, which will be about labor and jobs. We will be starting with Will and Ba on this one. What specific policies and procedures would you change to improve wages and working conditions for Somerville residents? Will?
Thank you, Lisa. I think one of the first things I would do is enforce, because we have laws, Lisa, we have policies, but if they are not enforced, it's nothing. It's like a toothless bulldog. So we need to enforce the wage theft ordinance that, you know, we passed. This is something that we need to like take it head on and make sure that we also deal, like any contractor that is coming to get contract with us, we make sure that we look at their records, make sure that they've been paying, you know, they've not been skimping on the backs of working class people. So we make sure that they're paying their workers a living wage. You know, they make sure that they also, and we also see that their workers have the right to organize, because we know that unions are the backbone of the working class. I'm also a union member, so my union is Moses, Massachusetts Organization of State Engineers and Scientists. So I know the importance of unions. So I will be at the front and center to make sure that unions are respected. And if you don't respect them, if you don't pay a living wage, you cannot have a contract with our city. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Next on this one, we have Mary Casasso.
Thank you. I agree that we absolutely have to enforce the wage theft ordinance. And I did some work when I was at Cambridge Health Alliance, not in the city of Somerville, with businesses that were known to be taking advantage. So enforcement is key, and we need to send the message that if we have an ordinance, we will enforce it. I also agree that we have to advance living wages. We need to have an hourly rate that makes it possible for someone to live in the city, to have benefits, to have paid time off. The pandemic hit the most vulnerable so hard because they had to show up at work if they were going to be paid. And people went to work even when they weren't feeling well. And having lived in overcrowded conditions, the spread of COVID, because you couldn't isolate, was huge. We need to make certain that we don't use independent contractors that is really regular jobs, but we're avoiding paying benefits in wages to folks that deserve that security, and provides them the opportunity to have paid sick leave, to be with their child if they're sick, etc. We have to do.
That is time on that one. Thank you. And next we have Katiana Valentine.
Thank you. So I am so for the living wages. People work at their jobs, 8-10 hours a day. It should be one job that they're working for, and they should have a living wage. If they don't have a living wage, then they're going to have to take a second job or a third job. And that directly impacts their health. It directly impacts the families, the children's, their other family members or spouses. And it's just not good for us as human beings. And we should be able to have one job, be able to go home and enjoy our families. We should be treating everyone equitably and equally within the city and with the same benefits that everyone is having. Any laws that we have or any contractors that we're working with, we should make sure, of course, that the wage theft ordinance is in place, and certainly challenge it if it is not. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are heading into our last couple of questions before closing remarks. So the next one will be about charter reform. We will have Mary Casesso going first on this one, and here is the question. The city is currently undergoing a charter review process. What changes do you hope to see in the final proposal? And would you support moving any powers from the mayor's office to the city council? And if so, which ones? Starting with Mary.
Thank you. I look forward to the report from the Charter Commission. In the years I've lived in Somerville, there have been several reviews, and I think it's a really important responsibility. And I applaud the people that spend their time doing this work. It's not easy. Somerville has a particularly strong mayoral form of government, and there is room within that continuum for there to be more voices, voices of the neighborhoods, voices of the counselors, and still deliver good, solid government. But that represents more. Somerville has very involved and committed citizens. And those voices make the city a better place. I talk about when I was young and we were always involved in what was going on in the city. Let's bring those voices forward. The councilors spend an inordinate amount of time. It increases every year. Let's reward and applaud their contributions and staff them appropriately. So I do feel that we need to see the report, and I think there is opportunity to have some robust conversations about what would work the best for all voices in Somerville.
Thank you. Katiana Valentine, you are up next on this one.
Thank you. So I believe in inclusive leadership, and guess what? It gets messy. It takes a little longer, but you get buy-in, you get shared purpose, and you certainly get enthusiasm, because that's when we deliver our best results. I've been asked this question about the charter, and I am willing as mayor to share responsibility and listen, certainly as being a city councilor, what my colleagues have to say. I think the most important thing is transparency. I think that our community wants to be able to see transparency, and everybody else. They want to know that there's no backroom deals, and that policies have been thoughtfully and deliberately considered. So I welcome, the discussion. I welcome having more voices at the table, because at the end of the day, what we work on will be better. Thank you.
Thank you. And now over to Willem Baugh.
Thank you, Lisa. As someone who is living from a city council now to the office of the mayor, I've seen just how much power, like Mary mentioned, the mayor has. So we need to be equal branches of government. That is something that I believe in distributed leadership. And also I think that, city council should be able to have more say in the budget process. If you watch our budget process, it's like we are operating in the dark. We can only cut budget. We cannot add, we cannot even allocate where it goes to. It doesn't make sense to me. And also the city council needs its own legal advisor. We've been fighting about that from when I became a city councilor till now. So we need to do that. And also city council should be a full-time job, Lisa. There's a lot going on. This city has changed. We cannot, be operating, like it's 100 years ago that they developed this charter, and 100 years later, we are still, operating with a 100 years mentality. So I think we need to do more to optimize our charter to make sure that it's fair and equitable for our city government. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to talk about, progress. How to evaluate your progress should you be elected as mayor. So the last question, we will start with Tatiana Valentine on this one. And it is, what metrics should we use to evaluate your progress to meeting your goals by the end of your first term?
So thank you for the question. Well, I have on my website some pretty detailed plans. I think that that's a starting point of where you can measure the metrics. We can certainly, what I think is a great idea is keep that metric out there. Identify the progress that's been made, the meetings that have been had, the initiatives, the legislation that has been had. And I would certainly be willing to put those, show that progress, and make it very public so you all can see what I've worked on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on this one, we have Willem Baugh.
Thank you, Lisa. I like this question because even when I got elected the first time, so my kitchen cabinet is still the same people, like at least most of them, unless the people that move out of the city. When I got elected, I said, look, I still want us to meet. Don't just elect me and then let me go. And then, I just start to do my own thing. Hold me accountable. This is what I believe in. This is what I believe in making sure that I'm actually there executing what, the mandate that the people send me to do. That's how, if you remember when I talked about climate change, we set benchmarks, to make sure that people see what is happening. This is also how I would take the civilian oversight board that I talked about creating. We have to measure how effective it is, and you can always go back to the drawing board. Make sure that you incentivize people. Make sure who is at the table. It's like people can move and go to different places, and so you always have to be intentional. If you're not intentional, everything you're doing is just talk. Get people's vote and move on. Before you know it, you don't even, remember the people that elected you. So I'm all for transparency, accountability. That is my number one thing that I believe in, because an open government is a functioning government. And so that is what I will look up to. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Mary Casasso.
Thank you. I agree that we have to have a scorecard. We have to have metrics, and they have to be reviewed monthly. And I would imagine that the city council, among others, should be reviewing what those metrics are. When I worked for the city of Somerville, I developed the first program planned budget. It wasn't as comprehensive as I would want now, but it was a start where we identified in each department what our goals were, what the objectives were, what we were trying to accomplish, so that we all put our arms around performance and accountability and what we were trying to achieve. And so I would require that of each and every department, and we have a scorecard. I talk, for instance, about 311 as an example, that I feel strongly that we always need to help everyone that lives in the city navigate city services, but close the loop and find out, did we achieve what we were trying to do or helping a resident to do? So circling back. And then finally, I laid out very detailed plans of what I expect to accomplish. But those would have to be integrated into all the departments, and then input from the departments, input from.
That is time on that one. Thank you very much for your response. So we have reached time for concluding statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to close out their remarks this evening. We will start with Willemba, then we will go to Mary Casessa, then Katiana Valentine. So Willemba, you are up.
Thank you, Lisa. I remember I said in the beginning that the two biggest issues that we are facing right now is inequality and climate change. There is no other better candidate to address both of these issues than myself. On inequality, I've experienced this personally. I know what it's like to be racially profiled. I know what it's like to move every year because of rising rents. I've experienced this housing crisis firsthand. We need leaders who can empathize with the people they are serving. And on climate change, I have the background to prepare Somerville for extreme weather events that you will face in the future. I have 2 degrees in environmental science, and I work as an environmental analyst with the State Department of Environmental Protection. I've worked since I moved into this city to make it a city that is clean and more sustainable. That's why I was endorsed by 314 Action. You know, it's a national organization committed to electing candidates that have a background in STEM. And that you can be assured that I will always put people first before developers. That's what I'm committed to doing. Our city is growing in inequality. I'm the only candidate who have never accepted contribution from any developers. And I'll be honored to have your vote on September 14th, to my listener and to my viewers. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Mary Casessa, it is your turn.
I'm still the slowest with the unmute button. I want to thank the Somerville Democratic City Committee for pulling this forum together, and of course our moderator, and for everyone who either attended this evening or will. Thank you, because your time is precious and your commitment to the city the same. I am so proud of the people of Somerville and their commitment, care, and concern for our city. As I've been canvassing throughout the city and each ward in the city, I have met so many neighbors, people who have been kind enough to share their priorities, to share their concerns, to share what works, and to share what they'd like to see changed. I want everyone to know that I will be the mayor that listens to your concerns on affordable housing, on public health, health equity, climate justice, employment, and education, among other social factors. I always talk about 80 to 90% of your health is driven by these social factors. What is happening in your community? What kind of housing do you have in your community? What kind of job do you have? Did you have education? Like I was the first in my family to attend college and graduate school. That changed my trajectory, and that is my value that will lead my leadership. I have unparalleled experience running large and complex organizations. My value in leadership have been shaped by my lived experiences. I will leave no one behind in the city. I have deep and trusted relationships at all levels. And I will work with neighborhood groups, counselors, all stakeholders. I would be honored to get your.
That is time. Thank you very much. And now we have Katiana Valentine. You should be unmuted.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Thank you. Thank you so much to the Somerville Democratic City Committee for setting up this great forum. Our next mayor must have 3 key qualities to do the job that we deserve. She needs to embody the cultures and values of Somerville. She needs to have an inclusive leadership style, and she needs to have the proven experience to be our next chief executive. I'm running because I best bring these 3 qualities to the office of mayor. I've supported and enacted progressive policies on affordability, the environment, transportation, responsible development, and many other issues. Over the last 20 years, I've shown in my professional, volunteer, government work that I deliver to make Somerville better for residents. As mayor, I'll be sure to keep listening to our active residents, and I'll make sure that the vulnerable residents have a seat at the table to help shape our policies together. I have built coalitions as a professional, as a community leader, and on our city council. My style is to work together to accomplish positive change. And I've been effective on issues from preventing displacement to racial justice, from keeping people safe in our neighborhoods and setting a vision for the city we want to be in the future. Right now, Somerville is at a pivotal time as the city chooses its new leadership. In these times, we will need experienced, progressive, inclusive leadership more than ever. That is what I believe is at stake in this election. That is the leadership that I have shown for many years, and that is why I'm running for mayor. And I ask for your vote on September 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our candidates for joining tonight to share your positions and platforms. Thank you to everyone for joining us. This will conclude the forum. It will be saved on the Somerville Democrats website and Facebook page. So feel free to watch it back, forward to any of your neighbors and friends who are not able to attend this evening. And the Somerville Democratic City Committee would like to remind you to make sure that you are registered to vote. And be well, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.